Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live edition of the Fantasy Gameplan podcast, where you will actually see my face and Matt's face in rotation because I have not clicked a button that I wasn't supposed to click. Oh, Google Plus, I love you so much. Anyway, as I've kind of alluded to, I'm joined by Matt Harmon as always. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing good, Leo. It's been 3 weeks of the NFL season. 3 weeks to match the three interceptions that Ryan Fitzpatrick threw last week, which is just doesn't it just all line up perfectly?
You're the worst. You were literally.
I've been sitting on that intro since Sunday.
I I have no doubt in my mind that you have just been waiting for the opportunity to rag on me about a quarterback that I think is better than most people think, but that I don't think is like the greatest quarterback ever, who continues to post good statistics that you just ignore in the name of, well, I watched the games and he's really bad. Um, so, whatever. I mean, you can keep on making fun of me for um, Ryan Fitzpatrick all you want, but the fact of the matter is, he is better than most people think, and I will continue to say that until the end of time, basically. But I need to find the link to send this out because the link that Google gave me is broken because I don't have any idea how to do fantasy or Google Plus Hangouts. So talk for a minute about your fantasy teams because everyone cares about our fantasy teams. So talk for a minute about how you're doing this year and some of your best and worst calls while I figure this crap out.
Okay, well, I'm doing pretty good, I'll say. I know the one league we're in together, ironically, I'm 0-3. That team is pretty rough, but that's a 16-teamer, and that, whatever. But a few other things are good. They're going pretty well. Right now, I am in the situation, I tweeted about this a little bit today, where I'm just looking to trade wide receivers because I have, like, 6 good ones in a lot of situations, which was to be expected because I avoided running backs like they were hot. I'm also trying to push. I have Jay Cutler on a lot of teams. I'm trying to push him around for trades. So basically, right now, my teams are pretty good, but I'm looking to trade. Daily fantasy, I was doing good until last week. I really took a bottom nosedive there, which is fine. Well, maybe not fine because I'm looking to move into a new apartment. But anyways, so I guess I'm doing all right. I'm just trying to fill up some time right now, I guess.
Sorry, like I said, Google. I don't like it. I don't like Google.
Well, there's just a link there. Well, now I'm just going to.
But it's not because like I'm on 2 computers and this is all a mess. This is all in shambles. I'm on 2 computers and the one that has the Hangout running is not the one where I'm logged into Twitter. So now I have to log into Twitter because the link is on there and it's not on my other computer. So anyway, I'm about to tweet it out.
Okay. Well, I'm just waiting to take it.
Fantasy Game Plan is live.
When you cut this to iTunes, make sure all this is on there too.
Oh no, I'm not going to touch this at all. This is a part of the process. There we go. The Fantasy Game Plan is live. Check it out here. Let me click it to make sure it works. And it does. It works. Okay. So, now that I've actually given people a chance to click on the link and watch our show, I will say hello and welcome to the Fantasy Game Plan podcast. My name is Leo Howell. As you can see by my lower third, which I actually figured out this week with an awesome picture on it, and I am joined by Matt Harmon, who just told you about fantasy leagues that I wasn't listening about, so he probably could have said awful things about me.
I wasn't. I was being nice.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm encouraged by the fact that you did not take an opportunity to take a shot at me when you totally could have.
I think I did enough of that earlier today, trying to manufacture a little heat before we got on the podcast.
You did, and then I got you with the ultimate. Like you were throwing a bunch of little jabs, and then I came in with the haymaker. And
I'm not sure that happened at all.
In the tweet sequence with Danny from I forget what his website's name is. and I also forget how to pronounce his last name. And by forget, I mean I have no idea because I'm awful at pronouncing names, which my other co-host on my other podcast makes fun of me for all the time.
Oh,
But
I said that I was gonna say some stupid stuff on my podcast tonight.
yes, and I said sources confirm out of
Oh,
nowhere because I'm a boss. Um,
whatever.
let's talk about fantasy football. And this week, bye weeks start, and there are injured players and there are suspended players still, even though there's not as many. Um, so basically, it's just chaos right now. There are 6 teams on bye this week, and we were just talking about this. They are the Cardinals, Bengals, Browns, Broncos, Seahawks, and Rams. Um, which actually, those are almost in alphabetical order by their city names and their mascot names. It's only a little bit off. That's weird. But anyway, so there's a bunch of teams on bye. Obviously, having the Broncos, Bengals, and Seahawks out, that takes out a lot of fantasy relevant players and then defenses too. So what we're going to talk about just here real briefly is kind of what do you do on bye weeks when it comes to a bye week, and it's too late to talk about drafting, but I think my general stance, and I don't know what yours is, it may be similar, but my general stance on drafting is I don't really look at bye weeks all that much unless it's an MFL 10 and I don't get to work the waiver wire because I just want to get the best players, and if I have to like work a trade or drop somebody, I'll do that in week 4 or week 6 or week 10. I'd rather just have the better players on my roster at first. So at this point, this is when I kind of have to pay for that. And I tend to have some certain decisions that I tend to make. Is there any general approach to how you shuffle your roster during bye week periods? Is there anything you look to do in particular when you need to replace a tight end or a quarterback or a kicker or a defense? How do you kind of approach those? Do you have any general thoughts on how to manage the bye week's frustrations?
Well, just to kind of circle back to the draft thing, my strategy is similar to yours. I think looking at bye weeks and trying to match up, my backup won't have the same bye week as my starter. I think that's kind of amateur hour. I did that.
I agree completely, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that get the best players. Don't worry about when their bye week is. And
yes, obviously in an MFL 10, it's totally different. You cannot stack bye weeks in an MFL 10. But any other league, don't worry about bye weeks.
Yeah, I mean, there's usually someone you can pick up off the waiver wire, and that's the way I look at it is, I'm going to play matchups and volumes. Because there's always some guy who has pretty good, significant volume that's going to be available on the waiver wire, whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver or even a running back sometimes. And I'll take those guys and stick them in my lineup and feel fine subbing them in for bye weeks. I think there's plenty of stuff. Or, if you want to be aggressive, you can shoot for a trade, but I tend to not do that. That seems kind of panicky, especially for bye weeks. And honestly, I mean, I know it's a weekly game and everything, and you want to win weeks. If there's 1 week where I, have a ton of guys on bye, and I don't want to shake my roster up too much and have to drop somebody significant, I'll take an L 1 week. I mean, I'm fine with that. I think that in general, if your team is good enough, it can sustain losing 1 week and just like I said, just punting a week, and then it's probably not going to be your only loss. But it usually won't be the difference in whether your team makes the playoffs or not. In my experience, I feel like.
I mean, that really depends on your league settings. If it's a 12-team league and there's only 4 teams making the playoffs, like there is a slim margin for error there that you're risking by giving yourself a loss. That said, if you get rid of a player who's good and he winds up on another team, that's also impacting your win-loss record potentially. So I'm pretty aggressive with the guys that I get rid of during the season. This week, I've been cutting Ryan Matthews in some of my leagues. Which and these are in thinner leagues. Like in a deeper league, I'm not going to cut Ryan Matthews. Like if it's a 16-teamer or something, I'm not going to cut him. But in like a 10-team league or even in a 12-team league, like I'm willing to cut Noshawn Moreno right now to fill in for a bye week because I feel like those guys aren't every week starters when they come back anyway. So I'm not going to keep a roster spot and lose points because of them when I may not actually get points from them later. Um, if AJ Green was hurt, like I'm not going to cut him even if he's hurt for like 6 or 7 weeks. But like if you were stashing Marvin Jones, now is the time to cut him, particularly since the Bengals are on a bye week this week anyway. So it's not like you'd even get him back this week. There's a lot of guys like that if you were stashing them or whatever, it's time to just let them go, in my opinion, and get the points you can get this week because, like you said, it's a weekly game, and in a lot of leagues you only have 12 or 13 chances. And like particularly if you haven't started out perfect, you're running the risk of kind of being out of the mix already. Not saying that it's time to panic. I feel like that's another thing we could talk about, maybe next week. It's definitely not time to panic if you're, only 0-3, because 0-3 is really not the end of the world. But if you're 0-3 and then you decide to punt a week because you've got bye week problems, then 0-3 becomes 0-4, and that's a quarter or a third of your season, gone. Which can be a big deal. So I'm going to say that I would be aggressive with the bye weeks, and yeah, like if you're filling in for bye weeks, I'm not looking for rest of season with guys. I'm looking for 1 week. I'm treating everything like a streamer. Quarterbacks and tight ends, obviously, I'm treating with all the millions of resources for streaming out there. You can go to Number Fire. You can go to countless other. Sorry, I had to plug Number Fire. You can go to countless other fantasy football sites out there and get streaming recommendations and use those for your quarterbacks. Like if you've got Russell Wilson or if you've got Peyton Manning, first of all, you probably didn't listen to our podcasts before the season. But if you've got Peyton Manning, you need to go and look at some streaming options. Like this week, Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater. If Big Ben's available in your league, you should pick him up and then let him play against the Bucks, and then trade him at his highest point after he throws for 500 yards against the Bucks. But yeah, be aggressive. Use streaming recommendations, and then for running back and wide receiver, yeah, go for volume in that week, predictions in that week. So if you're looking at this week, like Donald Brown would be a guy to go get if you have bye week issues. They're not on bye. No, they're not on bye. I'm already backwards on this stuff. Yeah, go get a guy like Donald Brown. Go get a guy like Jeremy Curley if Eric Decker's health continues to be an issue, which it looks like it is. That's another guy that you'd want. Guys like that are going to have volume in that week. You don't need to look rest of the season on guys you're picking up for bye weeks because, in theory, you're just going to drop them again and continue to roll with your roster. The only other thing that I will ask you, and this came up in a discussion I was having today on Twitter, do you ever go kickerless or defenseless during a week to pick up a player that you need at another position? There are some leagues where you can't do this. There are some formats. I don't think ESPN lets you cut your kicker or defense in its standard leagues. Maybe you can change those settings. But in a league where you have a kicker and a defense, would you ever go without one for a week to pick up a player to fill in for a bye week?
No, I don't think I would. I don't like to take the 0. I don't like the look of the 0. It makes me annoyed to just see that empty. And it also really depends. I mean, sometimes you can get 7 points from a kicker, and sometimes that's the best you're going to get from your bye week fill-in. So, I don't know. No, I don't like to do that. I can understand the wisdom in doing it, especially if there's a really good option that. And again, I think that's a case-by-case basis. Is there a really good option? Maybe then you consider it. But for me, no, I don't particularly tend to do that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it really is an issue for me because you really kind of have to compare the volume that you're getting there over the whole season, the volume of points that you're losing versus the volume of points that you're gaining. Because if it's a situation where someone's like, if you're in a league with me and somebody dropped Ryan Matthews, and you think that you're going to get like 5 weeks of starters numbers from him, then that may be worth it to go a week without a kicker or a defense. But if you're just filling in for a bye week and you're just getting 1 week's worth of play out of a guy, you really have to weigh the possibility that he may not outscore your kicker or defense if you're getting him off the waiver wire. So
exactly.
I'm not opposed to getting rid of a kicker or a defense if you want to stash a guy that's been dropped, who may give you multiple weeks in the future, and you just have to figure out how to make room on your roster for now. But I'm not okay with doing it for a 1 week thing. I think you should. I would rather take a 0 or a really bad option, or even a risky option. Like if you've got a guy right now who's an injury doubt, and he's your only other option at say wide receiver. Like say you've got Eric Decker, and he's your only other option at wide receiver, and you just don't have anybody else because you got bye week issues. I would rather have Eric Decker in my lineup at the chance that he plays than cut my kicker for Jeremy Curley, who may not outscore my kicker. So I think that you need to hold on to your kicker in defense unless you're going for some long-term stash. And even then, you really have to weigh how much you're going to get out of that guy, because if Josh Gordon hits your waiver wire, like you may only get a week or two out of him, and so he may not actually outscore your kicker in 1 week, depending on how good of a week your kicker has, which can be pretty random. We got a tweet from Russell Clay at FF Russell Clay on Twitter. He actually is on the punt the week bandwagon when it comes to cutting for bye week issues. And he thinks that my cutting Ryan Matthews is pretty interesting. But like I said, it is in shallower leagues. Like I'm not going to go cutting him in a 12 or a 14 or a 14 or a 16 teamer or anything. But in a 10 teamer, like if you've already got like in these leagues, like I've got LaShawn McCoy and Gio Bernard already, and I've got Fred Jackson and Mark Ingram and guys like that on my bench. Like when was I going to use Ryan Matthews over those guys as such a or when was I going to use Ryan Matthews over those guys as such a clear-cut option, So it really has to do with roster construction, because if you went, WRWR in the first 2 rounds and Ryan Matthews is your RB1, is a totally different discussion. But, so that's the same case. Like if you've got, Vincent Jackson right now in a 10-team league and you started with 2 receivers before him, like I'm not totally opposed to cutting him at this point, given kind of what we've seen from that team at this point.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely depends on your league size, depends on how you drafted, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying everyone should cut Ryan Matthews, but if you've got multiple guys that are at the running back position that you already like more, like in all of my leagues where I have Ryan Matthews, I also have Fred Jackson, and I would have taken. If the value, like if I didn't know market value, I would have taken Fred Jackson ahead of Ryan Matthews in all of those leagues. So, but obviously I didn't have to because of where his market value was. So it's a situation where you have to judge by your roster. But again, it's comparing how many points you're going to get for the rest of the season from that player. And I'm not going to be too concerned if somebody scoops up Ryan Matthews on me. I'm not going to lose a week because somebody picked up Ryan Matthews. It may make it a tough challenge, and they may win, but he's not going to be the reason that I lose to somebody, or he's not going to be the reason somebody wins the league, because ultimately everyone's going to have to drop someone in a shallow league, and in a shallow league that means there's going to be good players on the waiver wire. So
yeah, totally. And one point I would want to make in this whole discussion is, before you get to the drop point, I always think that there's a point where you might try to flip the guy in a trade. Like
absolutely,
that's something I think you should explore too before you just immediately go to drop the guy. Hey, how about if you are in that situation where you have McCoy, you have Bernard, all these guys, and then you also have Matthews, maybe you try to flip him to the guy like me who didn't take any running backs. So I think that's an option you can explore. And maybe you can get a valuable asset that can help you in the short and long term.
Or just go 2 for 1 with him,
right?
And get a starter and open a bench spot, which then solves both of your problems. Like the Ryan Matthews and Justin Hunter for mid-round player who is doing about what we expected of them. Like a Kelvin Benjamin.
Sweating in the spotlight there, Leo.
Kelvin Benjamin would be a name that I think would be a fair deal, considering Matthews' injuries, but, whatever. I'm awful at trading, and that's something that we kind of wanted to talk about as well, and we'll just touch on that briefly. And specifically, one thing I did want to talk about is trading Josh Gordon. Obviously, Gordon will be out for the next 7 weeks at this point, 6 weeks at this point, because it doesn't seem like his DWI is going to give him an added suspension. So he will be back at week 12 or whatever it is. Um, so if you've got him on your bench and with bye weeks starting, are you willing to trade Josh Gordon, and what are you looking to get in return? This is a discussion that somebody brought up on Twitter today. I'm sorry, I forget their name. And I instantly, as a social experiment, I went through all my leagues where I have Josh Gordon and tried to trade him and got rejected every single time. So on both ends of the spectrum, are you willing to trade Josh Gordon, and are you willing to trade for Josh Gordon? And what kind of prices do you have on him at this point?
Yeah, it's such a tough situation. And kind of like you said, running a little social experiments, I have, in every ESPN league I'm in, which I think is about 3, I have Josh Gordon stashed on the bench. And so I'll probably, just to do a little, feel out the market and everything, I'll probably try to send out a few offers for him. But it's so tough. I don't even know what to ask for. And I feel like I'm going to get rejected every time, too, because I think a lot of people, especially casual players, will see Josh Gordon suspended for a long time. No, I don't want him.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people the people that had the foresight to think, okay, well, I want this guy for the playoffs, are probably the people that already have him on their roster. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of value out there in trading for him. And do I really want to trade Josh Gordon for some, like RB5 or whatever? No, not really. So I think there's utility in trying to trade for him, but it's really got to be the right owner. And I don't even know, like I said, I'm struggling right now to even come up with ideas of who to try to trade.
Well, in the example that was on Twitter, the person traded away Gordon and got back Michael Floyd. And if you can do that,
that's great, yeah.
All day, every day, because that is Michael Floyd. Even if Michael Floyd continues to be a little disappointing, you're still getting 50% of Gordon for 7 extra weeks. And so, like I think we mentioned either last week or the week before, if you wait for Gordon, you may be waiting until you're out of the playoffs and you only get him for a week or two. So if you can get a guy who can contribute now like that, I would definitely do it. So yeah, if you can get any starting caliber player at any position, that includes tight end, not kicker or defense. Don't do that. But if you can get a starting caliber player at any position for Gordon, you do that right away.
Here's my whole general thought about the thing. I think it's still a little too early to start exploring the possibility. I think it's going to be a lot better to look at that in a couple weeks from now when, A, it's closer to Josh Gordon being back, because then I think people are going to be more willing to take that on, and B, you also have a better idea of where your team is, the direction you're going, whether you need to panic, whether you need to acquire some sort of valuable asset that's not just going to be rotting your bench, because you're right, it's totally cool to say, hey, I'm going to hold Josh Gordon until the playoffs, but if you're, I don't know, 4-4, whatever, you're in trouble. You need to start exploring other options. Then I think whether it's come the time that you need to try to flip him for something, to get some value out of him, because you're running the risk more every week that you're not going to get any. Well, you're going to get weeks out of him, but they're not going to matter. They're going to be insignificant by that point. So I think with trading Josh Gordon, I'm open to it when the time comes, for sure. I'm open to it, but one, don't feel like it's going to come to fruition for multiple different factors, and 2, I don't think it's time to start considering that just yet.
The appeal of trading him now is that you get more weeks out of the players you get for him. So like I said, if you can get a starting caliber player for him now, you're getting 6 or 7 weeks out of him that you're not going to get out of Gordon. So if you can get a Michael Floyd, if you can get a starting tight end, if you can get a starting quarterback that's better than yours, for Josh Gordon, or obviously starting running back or wide receiver, you're going to get 6 or 7 more weeks out of that guy that you wouldn't have gotten anyway. So that's why I feel like this is the time to do it in that sense. If you're going to trade him for depth or for whatever else, yeah, you should wait to see what your team is like, because if you're sitting at 7-1 after 8 weeks and he's only a couple weeks away, he's ultra valuable to you. If you're sitting at 3-5 after 8 weeks, yeah, you need to trade him and try to get somebody who can make an impact right away. With the appeal of, you can type in the little comment box in the trade, hey, Josh Gordon comes back in a couple weeks, Mr. 7-1. How about you give me one of your good depth players for for Gordon, and then you can use him in the playoffs, and you know this is good for both of us, and try to sell them on that aspect of it. Just mentioning that like. Because I feel like if you're in a league with people you don't know, there may be some people who genuinely think you're trying to trick them by trading Josh Gordon at this point.
For sure.
So you need to just mention in the comments of your trade or send them an email or post on the league message board and say, like, I'm trying to trade Josh Gordon and I know he's suspended and I know you know he's suspended. Like, I'm not dumb. If it's in a league with friends, like, obviously it's totally different. In one of my leagues with friends, the commissioner actually continues to make fun of me on the league homepage for having him on my roster, as if he doesn't know that we're in a league that has as many bench spots as starting spots, and so there's way more room on my bench than I need, and so he's literally taking up a 20th of my roster in just a kind of standard-sized league, and 8 teams out of 12 or 10 make the playoffs, so like I'm guaranteed to get in the playoffs too. So I'm going to get everything out of Josh Gordon in the playoffs, and I'm going to kick his butt when it gets to that point. So, but he doesn't get it. So, and I also picked him up, and we're in another league with the same group of people where it's a keeper league, and he wasn't drafted, and then I picked him up afterwards. So now I get to keep him as a last-round keeper forever. So they done goofed in both of those leagues by letting me have Josh Gordon. But of course, keeping Josh Gordon long-term means he has to stay out of trouble too, which we've seen is not exactly something we should be banking on. But with trades otherwise, you mentioned that it's kind of panicky to trade at this point, even just like for bye weeks. Like I'd rather, and I think we both agree, we'd rather punt than make a bad trade to get a starting lineup. But just in general, at this time of the year, what do you, just quickly kind of go over, what are you looking for in a trade? Like, are you a buy low, sell high guy at this point? Or are you still trying to feel out everything and kind of more timid on the trades that you're looking at this point?
Yeah, I think that, just to be clear, I said it's a little panicky to trade at this point. And I think, like you said, it's a little panicky to trade for bye weeks. But I think there's a lot of utility in feeling out your league and trying to make some trades.
Yeah, no, yeah, I meant trading to get a starting lineup. Like that's obviously, you don't want to compromise yourself in a trade situation because you feel like you need to trade to get a starting lineup with bye weeks. Yeah, that's panicky, and that's not good long-term roster management.
Right. Yeah. Totally. So I do think I'm a lot. Sorry about that. I just got a tweet, but I think I'm very, very much like a buy low, trying to buy guys low right now. People are panicking on.
Okay, give some practical examples there.
Yeah. Eddie Lacy, for example, I think is a guy that's going to be fine long term. It's what meets my criteria of a buy low guy. Someone that I believed in pre-draft, and he hasn't met expectations. Obviously, they have to fit that first criteria. If it's not somebody that, like Monte Ball, for example, I don't think is a buy low guy because I wasn't high on him before, and this is a little worse than what I expected, but I didn't think he was going to be good in the first place.
So then, are you totally not willing to even go after Monte Ball, or are you still like let's just say that the Monte Ball owner puts him on his trade block?
Sure.
Are you still going to just throw an offer at him? Like are you the kind that's just going to ping out offers all the time, or are you just going to kind of ignore that and focus on a guy like Lacy instead?
I'm trying to be more of the former, a guy that's sending out offers all the time. That's kind of been my goal this year. Is I want to be more aggressive with trading it and trying to trade more in general. But it's tough, It's a very delicate art that I don't think we have a lot.
Yeah, and if you're, like I said, if you're in a league with people that you don't know, you quickly get a reputation for being the guy who sends bad trades because you're trying to rip people off. Which
exactly,
you should be trying to rip people off.
Right.
That's how trades should work. But
that's how I think. And that's what I think people. This is what drives me nuts about trading is that I think a lot of people see your first offer and reject it, and then that's it. We're done. I don't like that. I see my first offer as I'm starting let's start a conversation here. So like if I send you. I do that. I've done this a lot. I have Marcus Wheaton kind of on the end of my bench in a lot of leagues. I'll send him out for Eddie Lacy a lot. And everybody.
I would reject that and not send anything back. I would totally like that is
Sure,
beyond defensive.
sure, right, exactly. But I'm just saying, like, I think that's just a starting point. Whatever.
I need to in our league. I don't even know if in the league we're in together. I don't even know if I have Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm gonna pick him up or trade for him just so that I can offer him to you for your first round pick. Just to show you how insulting that deal is. Um,
Okay, okay, fine. Maybe that's a bad
well,
example.
no, I know what you're saying though.
Yeah,
I've done the same thing. Like in my
but
Josh Gordon trades, I offered Josh Gordon straight up for Demarius Thomas to somebody. So I totally
right.
get what you're saying here.
Like
Um,
it's really offensive when you say it. When you say it out loud, it's like, oh my God, you're a bad person. But I think it's just like I said, it's just a starting point. And I am a bad person, so that's already on the table. But
well,
anyway,
um,
but just so we're clear. But okay, let me dive a little deeper into this. And I'll use an example that I tweeted out today from one of my leagues, and I know nobody cares about my leagues, but so
everybody cared about your leagues.
well, they should. But anyways, I have in one league I have Des Bryant, Andre Johnson, Emmanuel Sanders, Marcus Wheaton, Brian Quick, and Kelvin Benjamin. I feel like those are all pretty good. I feel like it's a good receiver group right
Yeah,
there.
you probably have all four running backs, but continue.
No, well, this I have Andre Ellington is in there somewhere, but also this week I am kind of looking down the barrel of starting Alfred Blue and Lorenzo Talafera.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Those are
but
really good running backs, Matt. Really good.
again, I'll also say that this is a league that has you start two running backs and then you have the two receiver, or you start three receivers and two flex spots. So give me a break. I got a lot. Okay, anyways. So my point here is, what are the guys that I look at my roster and I think, okay, obviously I got some problems at running back. I want to flip these guys, one of these wide receivers for a trade. Um, I first of all, I think that there's a lot of value in when you're trying to sell a guy, you also have to look at his name value. So I threw this out on Twitter today. What should I do with these guys? Who do I keep? Who do I sell? And everybody pretty much told me to keep Dez except one person, so that's kind of a given. And I'm not planning on selling Dez Bryant. But then you look at guys like Emmanuel Sanders. Like I think he's pretty clear. People view him as a sell high candidate. Do you agree with
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, Emmanuel Sanders is definitely sell high, particularly with Welker working his way back into the lineup.
for sure. And so that's a guy that I try to send out for running backs. I've sent out an offer.
Is this the secret behind zero RB? Is that you
Yeah.
just take so many wide receivers that you just wind up trading
Yes.
for everybody's sell high or buy low,
Yeah.
sell high running backs? Because if
I,
that's the case, then you might as well just call it the punt the first 3 weeks strategy. But
that's the way I viewed it, and
yeah,
and the way I understood it is that zero running back is not meant for like the first 2 weeks of the season.
yeah,
And I mean, I actually started out 2-1 in most leagues that I did it in, anyways. And again, this is super anecdotal, whatever, yada yada.
super anecdotal.
Super anecdotal.
Also,
So
I'm looking at your team in the football Twitter league that we're in,
it's
and
bad.
it's you've rostered Darren Reeves. That's how bad it is.
Exactly, but also to comment on zero running back and kind of punting the position, you just have to keep taking your shots, and you kind of have to view it as, okay, I've got this one spot on my bench that I'm just cycling out crappy running backs or that get an opportunity. So yeah, the Carolina running back situation is a mess right now. Nobody's healthy. Darren Reeves is kind of the last guy that's standing. Maybe Williams starts to play. So yeah, I'll just keep him just on the off chance that he becomes a good player. Whatever. But again,
I guarantee that there are 20 players on waivers in that league that I would rather have than Darren Reeves. Actually, let me put that to the test right now.
okay, well,
I'd
I'll keep.
rather have Anton Smith. I'd rather have Kyle Juszczyk. Okay, like I'd just rather have everybody than Darren Reeves. Bilal
Look,
Powell, I'd rather have.
look, man. The way I viewed it is just that it's more about opportunity, and I
No,
think
I
he's
know, I totally know. And
yeah,
that running back situation, they're going to run the ball with somebody.
right, exactly. So
It's not going to be Cam this year anymore either.
no, it can't be. Not if they would like to stay alive.
So,
But yeah, so Emmanuel Sanders is a good sell high candidate. Back to kind of my point. That's a guy. So I look to sell high off performance, but then I also kind of look at, hey, who am I playing with? Are they guys that? Because I legitimately think that some people probably don't even know that, Emmanuel Sanders is playing so well, And so I might try to flip a guy like Andre Johnson instead. And so this is more about zero running back, that you have so many of these wide receivers that you try to
trade from your areas of depth and
exactly.
improve in your areas of weakness. That's definitely the thing to do. Like in a bunch, I'm in these Yahoo Pro leagues that the format is 2 RB, 3 wide receiver, and so I've got, like, because of the way I take running backs, like I just couldn't help myself. Like, oh, Toby Gerhardt's there in the 7th round. Of course I'm going to take him, not realizing that he was my 4th running back and I didn't even have 3 starting receivers yet. And so yeah, like right now, like people are just offering me, and usually they're offering me quarterbacks in 10-team league, which doesn't do anything for me. For my running backs.
Do they know who you are?
Apparently not. It's called a pro league. None of these people are pros because they would look up my Twitter handle, which I don't hide, and find out that I don't care about your quarterback. I'm not going to take Colin Kaepernick for Toby Gerhardt. That's a cute buy low attempt, but I'm not for it. But we'll get more into trading next week. I just kind of wanted to bring it up, particularly with the Josh Gordon thing, and then definitely with the concept of buy low, sell high. I think that is something that you should definitely do. Like you said, if there's a guy you believe in, and I wish I would have done it with Fred Jackson before this week in the leagues where I don't have him, which aren't many leagues. And what you should do with Ryan Fitzpatrick is that, since I know you believe in him so much, you should go out and get him after his worst week of the season. But we'll look ahead to week 4.
What about the weeks when he gets 0 points because he's going to get benched?
He's not going to get
Ryan Mallett.
For Ryan Mallett.
I'm not saying Ryan Mallett's
Mallett's going to, if Ryan Mallett starts starting, he's also going to get benched, and Fitzpatrick's going to get put back in because Mallett is
savage.
Look,
I think all these guys. I think
not be on an NFL roster.
I think all these guys are terrible. I'm just saying.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is the least offensive of them, and they have too good of a defense and too good of running backs and too good of skill position players to trot out some mess of a quarterback who can't run their offense.
I'm telling you, Mallett's gonna see time. It would make no. I would almost
in the eventual blowout victory when Ryan Fitzpatrick has led the team to 7 touchdowns and they're leading by 50 points in the 4th quarter. Absolutely.
Oh my God,
dude, you don't even know. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick is so good, you just have no idea. You just have no idea. He is. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything I regret here, but Ryan Fitzpatrick's really good.
Please stop yourself.
You're sleeping on my boy because the Giants have a good defense, and he was without Arian Foster. And stop hating. Let's talk about week 4. There's bye weeks. There's injuries. There's lots of crazy stuff going on. So let's just run through the positions real quick, like we always do, and answer some questions and things like that along the way. We only got one question.
I actually have another one too. So
okay, cool. We will get to the one about Vincent Jackson in a bit, but in response to that question from Tyler on Twitter that was sent to you, but I can see it because it's on the Game Plans feed as well, is the fact that Mike Glennon is probably starting for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, and so since we usually start with quarterbacks, we'll start here, and that he is one of multiple backup quarterbacks who will be stepping in this week. You've got Mike Glennon in Tampa against the Steelers. You've got Teddy Bridgewater for the Vikings against the Falcons. You've got Blake Bortles for the Jaguars going all the way out to the West Coast to play at the Chargers. And you may have in Tennessee, would it be Charlie Whitehurst or is Mettenberger ready? Like, what is the situation there? Because Jake Locker's hurt. Surprise. And so they're looking to go with a backup there. Do you have any insight as to who they'd go with? Neither one's fantasy relevant, but do you have any idea where they would go and what you do with that situation? Like, if you have Kendall Wright or if you have, Sean Green or Bishop Sankey, like, are you just avoiding that situation altogether this week?
Yeah, I would probably just avoid it altogether.
Because they're playing the Colts. Like,
I know.
I could throw for 300 yards against the Colts. I'm not sure if Charlie Whitehurst could, but if they replace the football with a clipboard, Charlie Whitehurst is must start in all formats. But because seriously, go look at that dude's Pro Football Reference page.
He's terrible. He's really, really.
Not only is he bad, he hasn't thrown a pass since 2010. Like
Mm.
he is one of the highest paid backup quarterbacks for doing absolutely nothing. And I have nothing against Charlie Whitehurst. Like I remember watching him at Clemson, right? I think it was Clemson. Um,
Yes.
and like I mean, obviously the dude is talented enough, but like he's the Matt Castle of the NFL. You know, the college and whatever Matt Castle of the NFL. He's just the career backup quarterback that you don't really know what he's going to be. You know, once he actually gets a chance, but that situation's a mess. I still, if we get clarity on who's starting there, I'm willing to stream whatever quarterback starts against the Colts. The position players, not so much, because I have no idea who's going to have chemistry with with Charlie Whitehurst. You know, like this could be the week that Taylor Thompson scores 2 touchdowns from the tight end position because that's just the guy
Wow.
but like you can see that happening,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah, totally.
So I'm shying away from the position play. Like if you've got Kendall Wright, you probably need to start him if it's a PPR league.
Mm.
But other than that, like I don't like Sean Green's probably going to get the bulk of the carries there. So I don't hate that for a volume-based play, but that's an ugly situation. But yeah,
Here's my thoughts on that. The whole Tennessee quarterback situation. Whitehurst is terrible, but like, if anybody thinks that they're just going to seamlessly transition from Jake Locker into Zach Mettenberger, I think you're probably a little misguided. That I'm almost positive that, in fact, I'm like 99.9% certain that Whitehurst is going to see time before Mettenberger does.
yeah, because first of all, Mettenberger's still kind of dealing with the ACL.
Yeah.
And second of all, like he's not that great.
Good. No, I don't remember all your draft takes, but I was not a Mettenberger guy. I'm not a his type of quarterback guy, anyways. But
I mean, I didn't hate him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
I didn't have him as a top.
he's better than Tom
quarterback.
Savage.
There's some standards, but no, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. I think I had them both pretty low, but yeah. Mettenberger.
Yeah, like I'm not like if you're in a 12-team league, there are better options out there than whoever starts at quarter, unless it's Jake Locker. If Jake Locker starts against the Colts, that's a decent streaming option. We've seen this movie before and it didn't end well, but
no.
Give him another shot because everybody but Chad Henne does well against the Colts defense. So
I do think Mettenberger, because I see him getting on the field at some point when the Titans are out of contention and Locker's hurt and they've seen quite enough of Charlie Whitehurst. I think Mettenberger will get on the field at some point, and when he does, I think maybe I'm just hoping, but I think he has some value. I think he'll offer some value to Justin Hunter because
okay. I can see that.
I think Mettenberger's the type of guy, and he did it a lot at LSU with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. They had really good ball skills. I think he's the type of guy who will just unconsciously throw it up to some guy, and the only guy on the roster there that does that is Hunter. So I think he could, late in the season, when you've probably already given up on Justin Hunter, that's when he'll have some value because Mettenberger, I think they'll mesh a little bit in that regard.
Of course. I talked about Glennon earlier as another one of the backups stepping in. Pittsburgh's banged up on defense. Mike Glennon's not good. You may think that you remember Mike Glennon is a good quarterback. I'm here to tell you that he's not. From every metric imaginable except for touchdown to interception ratio, he's not good. And I say every metric except for touchdown to interception ratio. That also, by extension includes his QB rating, which is inflated because of his touchdown to interception ratio. He had a game against the Bills where he threw for 90 yards but had 2 touchdowns, one of which was maybe the worst touchdown pass in NFL history, where he was throwing on the, I was going to say on the run, it's more like on the jog to his right. And Vincent Jackson had 5 steps on his defender and was headed towards the end zone. Glennon's throw wound up short and inside to the point where the defender, who was just totally clueless, saw Jackson come for pass interference, and Jackson just fought through him and got to the ball. If the defender had any awareness whatsoever, it would have been an easy interception. But that's the kind of stuff that Glennon did last year that inflated his numbers, which is why, looking at his overall efficiency numbers and just how bad that offense is in general, you don't want Mike Glennon, but he does favor Vincent Jackson, and we'll talk about wide receivers in a second, and that's the question that you got that we will address. But You don't want Mike Glennon. The two rookie quarterbacks starting for the first time. Bortles against the Chargers. It's a West Coast game. It's his first road game. The Chargers look a little better on defense than they did last year. So I'm not going to go crazy about Bortles, but he's definitely a good option. Bridgewater against the Falcons, I'm very excited about, and I think he's probably a top 12 to 15 play this week, based on that matchup and the weapons that he's got. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph, missing would be a bit of is a bit of a downer, but with a guy like Patterson, a guy like Jennings, like I'm willing to start Bridgewater in a 12-teamer if I've got Russell Wilson on a bye or something like that, or Andy Dalton for that matter.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm excited about Bridgewater. I'm excited about what he's going to do for Patterson. That's both of those things are exciting to me.
I feel like this is a good week to trot out Patterson and DFS because it's multiple kind of new toys interacting with each other, and you may see some play calling to get those two kind of in sync because Greg Jennings is just always going to be there, and he may have a good week too. But I feel like they may do some things to get Patterson specifically involved in what could be a very high-scoring game.
Well, God, I hope they do, because I tweeted this last night that I'm not so sure that Bill Musgrave did not kidnap Norv Turner and is wearing his face like some kind of serial killer movie and trotting around the Vikings sideline, because I just can't believe that without Adrian Peterson on the field, they've only given Patterson these 5 touches. But hey, I think it's just 2 weeks. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, it's super small sample sizes, and he's always been a small sample size guy. This is what you got yourself into when you drafted Patterson. So anyway. Well, let's just talk about a couple of the bigger name quarterbacks here real quick. Jay Cutler's playing the Packers. Usually you'd think that's a good matchup, but they looked pretty good against Stafford. That said, I'm still comfortable starting Cutler and all that. Phillip Rivers against the Jaguars. They're going to run a lot against the Jaguars, but I'm still okay with Phillip Rivers because everybody seems to kind of pour it on the Jaguars. And Tony Romo, this is a good bounce back week for Tony Romo against the Saints, and Big Ben against the Bucks. I think I mentioned this jokingly either before the podcast or earlier in the podcast, but you want to target the Bucks right now, particularly since it looks like Michael Johnson is still limited. So their only pass rush is going to come from Gerald McCoy, who has a broken hand, and so that will limit him. And plus, you can just triple team Gerald McCoy, and the other defensive linemen for the Bucks just don't know how to get to the quarterback. So Ben will have all day, and the zone is super soft, and the safeties are clueless in Tampa. So expect. I seriously think Antonio Brown could catch 12 to 15 passes if it stays competitive enough for them to need to throw that often, which is the biggest issue with Ben, is that game may become a blowout, and they may not even need to throw, which then brings into running backs. And we'll just move through these quickly because we only got 10 more minutes. Brings into running backs. If you're desperate for running back this week, I'm okay with LeGarrette Blount. Revenge game. They're probably going to run a lot against the Bucks. I'm totally okay with him. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell as well. Are there any running backs in particular you're looking at this week?
Yeah, this is going to sound weird from me because I'm not a fan of his, but Bishop Sankey, I might not play him, but I'm definitely in monitoring mode with him against the Colts especially. In fact, if you're desperate on a bye week, I don't hate picking up Sankey, who might have even been dropped. I know he's dropped in a few of my leagues.
Definitely has been dropped because the man you made fun of me for supporting, Sean Green, has been holding it down for the Titans.
Holding it down, more like holding them back. Anyways, ha ha ha. Anyways, but seriously, so Sankey, yeah, I think you can roll him out there. And he looked pretty good, better than I expected against the Bengals. I know he put up a decent yards per carry. I don't really expect that to continue if he gets more work, but it's against the Colts, and the Colts are terrible. So, yeah, and just a few other guys that come to mind. I mean, the Miami situation, Miller is obviously a good play. It's tough to look across the schedule. I think Carlos Hyde against the Eagles is a pretty good play. If you're looking for relief, and James Starks is another one. It's weird what's going on with Eddie Lacy. I know I said I'm buying low on him, and I mean I totally am, but the way they were like really, they were pretty harsh on him in the press conference. This press conference. And Starks was, he's always a guy who just somehow plays well. There's so many things that are terrible about his game, but he still plays well. He's got some skill, and the Bears' run defense still doesn't scare me. So he's a guy that I might look to roll out there if I'm desperate.
If you mentioned Sankey, I'm still rolling with Green. Sean Green, I think, is a great play this week against the Colts. I mentioned that the Chargers are going to run a lot. You want Donald Brown because he's the only one left.
Yeah.
Donald Brown is an obvious play. If he's on your waiver wire, get him right now. You want him for now and for the long term because he's now the RB2 with Danny Woodhead out for the year. Kyrie Robinson, it's another good week for him against the Cowboys. It's another good week for Joique Bell, in my opinion. It was supposed to be last week, and it turned out to not be. I don't think you should fall for that again. They're playing the Jets. I feel like that's another good matchup for him. And I'm totally okay with Matt Asiata this week against the Falcons with a rookie quarterback starting. I feel like they're going to continue to feed him. I know that Jerick McKinnon started to get some carries, but Asiata has proven to be very good in the pass game. So especially if you're in a PPR league, but just in any league, I think he's just still going to get volume. This may be the last week. We may start to see him really fall out of favor, but if you're in a PPR league and he gets you 50 rushing yards and 5 catches for 25 yards, like that's a day that you can get behind for a guy that you got for free. And then obviously McKinnon's a guy to keep an eye on going forward. I just don't think this is the week to roll him out there. And you mentioned the San Francisco game. I feel like Darren Sproles is a good play this week in a PPR league as well, because of the way that game could get pretty high scoring, and I'm not convinced that the San Francisco defense is really all that great, even though people continue to refer to it as a tough matchup. I'm not really sure that it is. Let's move quickly to wide receivers, and you can refer to the question that I've already kind of hinted at multiple times from Tyler.
Sure, and let me find that real quick.
Actually, I've got it right here.
No,
it's from Tyler Roby on Twitter at Tyero, Tyero. And he asked, should I be looking to move from Vincent Jackson or see what he can get in a trade, or hold on to him and see what Glennon can do? I'll go real quick on this just to give some insight. McCown's probably going to start as soon as he's healthy. So seeing what Glennon can do isn't really the approach here. McCown still has pretty good chemistry with Jackson, though, so it's too early to sell on him. He is really the only good receiver there. He does have a wrist fracture. It's a very small one, and he's going to play with it. He already had drop problems, so there is the concern there with drops. And if his targets start to really decline because of the drops, then obviously it may be too late to trade him, but I feel like with what you invested in him, I'm not going to give up on him yet. And with Glennon starting, I'm definitely going to use him if I've got him this week. But I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I didn't think it would be so certain that McCown would start as soon as he's healthy, but I'll defer to you on that. That's obviously your thing over me.
It's Lovie Smith. Rex is our quarterback, Lovie Smith. Like, this is the guy that stuck with Rex Grossman through thick and thin. And he just loves Josh McCown. So
I think I just threw up on my mouth a little bit.
But they're both bad. Like, let's just face it.
Yeah, I think people definitely have and I don't really have a strong take either way on Glennon. I think he's just kind of.
How about Jackson? What are you doing with Jackson at this point?
Yeah. But Jackson, I'm still holding on Jackson for sure, especially while Glennon's in there. I'll probably roll Jackson out if he's healthy in a lot of daily leagues this week because
he's not healthy, but he's playing. He does have a wrist fracture, but he's going to play with it. So
even if he's playing, I think Glennon's still going to look for him, and I like to pay for volume in daily leagues. So I think
Glennon's top two targets last year were Jackson and Tim Wright, and Tim Wright isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going to favor Brandon Myers. I don't hate Brandon Myers this week. With Shazier's out for Pittsburgh, right?
Yes, yeah.
So their linebacking core is a little thin. I mean, they're bringing back James Harrison, of course it's thin. Joey Porter's not going to run out there and suit up. So I don't hate Brandon Myers this week if you need a PPR tight end streamer. We'll talk about them in a second, but. Yeah, I think we're both in agreement. Hold on to Jackson because I feel like Glennon may give him a week this week where you can actually sell him kind of high. Because at this point, you're selling him super low and you're not going to get anything for him.
Yeah.
Wait to see what he does with Glennon this week. Then I would be okay with selling him high if he does well this week, particularly if somebody doesn't know that McCown's probably coming back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And one other question we got during the show that we can work into this, and this is was from Russell Clay, who you mentioned earlier. He mentioned that he wanted us to talk. He said he won't admit defeat about Marquise Lee because he and I went back and forth on that a lot through the offseason, but he is worried a little bit, and he says we should talk about the Jags wide receivers. So do you have any strong takes on Jaguars wide receivers? I know how I feel about the situation.
I think that Allen Robinson was the better of the rookies, and Allen Robinson would be the guy I'd rather own in fantasy as well. I know that John Moore of RotoViz was really big on
he's number one receiver in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. He was really big on him and made a lot of convincing points about him as an athletic player and you know the things he did in college. So I'm very high on Allen Robinson. I was never very high on Marquise Lee because I felt like he kind of had that Greg Little everything's there but it never fits together sort of thing about him that worried me. So this is going back to like you mentioned with pre-draft and relying on your pre-draft thoughts. This is even pre-NFL draft. Like I always preferred Allen Robinson.
Yeah, same here.
But that said, Cecil Shorts is the guy there, and I am buying any Cecil Shorts I can get at this point because I feel like he is a week in week out, you know, WR2 flex kind of guy, particularly in a PPR league. That he's a lot better than people realize. He's just never had a good quarterback. So I am all about the Cecil Shorts. And I'm going to roster him as much as I can. From there, I feel like Robinson is rosterable in 12 team and larger leagues. I don't want Marquise Lee except for in the deepest of leagues and maybe in Dynasty, but even then, like I'm probably trying to sell him at this point. And Alan Hearns is very Kevin Ogletree-ish, and I'm not really going to invest in him in any way. But if I've got him, I'll hold on to him just in case. You know, Lee and or Shorts go down again because he'll just step into the lineup and you know if you have bye week issues you can toss him out there. But I'm not really high on Hearns in general. I feel like he's very easily taken out of a game just as much as he is easily capable of quote unquote taking one over with his deep catches.
Yeah, I agree on Hearns. I don't think he's quite Kevin Ogletree. I think he might have a future in the league, but I think for now he's not somebody that's going to be consistent unless someone gets hurt. Shorts still has value for sure. I'm not as aggressive about him as you are. I think we don't really know how he and Blake Bortles are going to mesh just yet. Over the long haul. But I mean,
they had some decent.
They had moments.
Yeah.
And he's the veteran there. He's the clear veteran there. So there's value in that.
With Mercedes Lewis out, he is the only guy who's legitimately played in the NFL before who is available to throw to.
And there's a lot of value in that. So I think that he's a guy that, like I said, I'm not as aggressive as you are about him, but I still like him a lot the rest of the way.
I would honestly, if he's healthy, rank Mike Brown ahead of Marquise Lee and Allen Hearns because of the fact that Mike Brown was one of Bortles' favorite receivers in the preseason.
I like Mike Brown. He was one of the first people that I wrote about at Backyard Banter when I started really seriously writing there. So he's a guy I like. But just to mention that.
I mean, I'm a little biased because he went to the same school as I did, and I've met him a couple times. But yeah, I really like Mike Brown. He does have drop issues as well, but he's
converting from quarterback. So
yeah, he played quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and he returned kicks and punts at Liberty. So he's done it all. But he was not a good quarterback actually at Liberty. Yeah. So that's why he's playing wide receiver in the NFL, and he's pretty good at it. I think he's the only player in the history of our conference to have 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards, and 1,000 passing yards in his career, and maybe one of the few in the NCAA. I figure a guy like Cordell Stewart probably has a similar stat line, but I can't think of many other players who would have, that distinction.
I keep forgetting that you go to Liberty because well, nobody listening knows this, but I went to Lynchburg College, so it's ironic that we have traveled such different paths to get here together, Leo.
Okay.
But Anyways, back to just wrap up the Jags thing. I don't often say this about players. I try not to be too mean, but Marquise Lee sucks. He's
I mean, yeah, there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot to worry about with him. There are things there that are really good. Like he's got great agility, but that only means so much. And when you're on a football field.
Yeah, exactly. He does like nothing for me. Just does nothing good for me.
The hands are such a big issue for me.
Yeah.
And the way that he attacks the ball and everything, it's just so weird.
And he's bothered. There's some players you watch, especially in college, that are just, and they get away with it in college, but they won't. It's something they won't get away with in the pros. He's bothered by contact in his routes. He reacts.
And that's the issue with Hearns too, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's not very physical, and
for sure.
When Hearns has the ball, he's physical. When he does not have the ball, he's very easily knocked off of his route.
Disrupted and. But Lee is not that way. He's not physical even when he has the ball. He takes really weird angles. Anyways, Lee's terrible. That's not my.
Like what you like about Robinson is the way he attacks the football, and that's
exactly
he wins in the NFL. And that's why I was worried about Sammy Watkins a little bit, because you didn't get to see a lot of that in college, because he wasn't really contested all that often.
It's a big deal. But I like Robinson the rest of the way. I think I probably like him best out of these guys, because I think he and Bortles will. They already look pretty good. He had 7 catches last week, and not all of them were with Bortles. But I think he'll be the guy that he kind of. I think they'll grow up together. Maybe that's a little more hopeful than anything. But I'm definitely rostering him in a lot of situations, and I think he's a guy that you could roll out during bye weeks at some points this year.
And then for the rest of our wide receiver recommendations, go back to the quarterbacks segment. And the quarterbacks that we talked about, you want their wide receivers, except for the Tennessee situation, because I think that's a mess. But like Keenan Allen this week, Eddie Royal, I guess.
Gross.
It's still the first month of the season, so he's still relevant before he disappears. Like I seriously think that he just quits after 4 weeks and has someone show up and wear his jersey, and he's actually really good. You just don't know it because he quits after 4 weeks. But like if you're desperate, like I'm okay with Eddie Royal over some of the different options there. But like I said, the other quarterbacks we talked about, Minnesota's wide receivers, even Jacksonville's wide receivers. We talked I'd be okay starting Allen Robinson this week, if you're in a pinch. Like if you've got Demaryius Thomas and Percy Harvin on bye week or something. Like I'm okay throwing out Allen Robinson. I'd prefer shorts, and I'm not going to start Lee or Brown unless it's like a 16 or 20 team league or something. But other wide receivers, I'm going to stay away from Eric Decker even if he plays this week. That matchup with Detroit is just too tough considering how well they're playing this year. And speaking of Sammy Watkins, I'm probably not going to play him against Houston this week. Just not going to trust that EJ, who is apparently hurt, is going to have a very good day, even though EJ has proved me wrong so far this year and actually deserves a little credit for what he's done. I'm just a little worried about that matchup because Houston has been pretty good against the pass. But we're getting to the end here, so let's move on to tight ends real quick. Antonio Gates and both Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green against the Jaguars are obviously big-time plays this week because we saw what the Colts did. Both of their tight ends wound up with 14-plus points in fantasy. Delaney Walker against the Colts, I will trust Delaney Walker regardless of who starts at quarterback for the Titans. And Jason Witten. People may be dropping Jason Witten, they may be selling him for pennies. I'm still trusting Jason Witten. I'm going to give him this one last shot against the Saints, and I feel like that's a guy that you should target. So I'm just going to. You can give the guys you want, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. Travis Kelce has started to emerge. He plays the Patriots this week. How do you feel about Travis Kelce against New England?
Yeah, I was just going to say Kelce's the guy that I think this week is going to be a really good play because I think the way Kansas City's offense is, they have the running game, they have Bo and Kelce, and sort of Bo. I think Revis will. He hasn't. I don't think he's been. He hasn't. Obviously, hasn't been Revis. Like you thought of him a few years ago, but I think he'll still pretty much take away Dwayne Bowe without a doubt. So I think that pretty much leaves Kelce, and they're starting to use him more.
Let's not fool ourselves here. Dwayne Bowe just being Dwayne Bowe pretty much just
away
Travis Kelce.
Right, yeah. True, very true. And then I think he just even more so, Revis will bye. Anyways, so he's not a factor, and I think that just pretty much leaves Kelsey. So I mean, who there's
Absolutely.
no. So I think
And Joe McKnight apparently.
yeah. Oh my God, I really honestly I know I think I know rosters like backwards and forwards most of them, and I was like Joe McKnight is still in the NFL.
I saw multiple tweets
Yeah.
mentioning the same sort of sentiment that people just didn't know that he was still in the NFL, which is totally. And didn't Cyrus Gray score like that? The
Yeah.
Kansas Andy Reid hates your fantasy team.
I hate Andy Reid right back.
Although really, like you shouldn't be rostering any Chiefs at this point except for
No.
Charles, who you're not playing until he's healthy, Niall, and Kelsey.
Yeah.
The rest of them are just totally not worth your time. So that's it for tight ends. Did you have any other questions? I know we got to the Jackson question and to Russell's question. Were there any other questions that you got?
Yep, I got one more, and this is just a pretty simple one. Kind of goes back to a lot of what we talked about, kind of wrap up, selling high and trading injured players. I was just offered, and this comes from @1 Torainer on Twitter, and he asked me, was just offered Keenan Allen for Mark Ingram. Thoughts on that?
He's getting Keenan for Mark Ingram?
Yes.
Yeah, I would do that. I mean, the roster construction depends, obviously, here, but Ingram's in such a messy situation that I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to keep doing what he was doing before he was hurt. Keenan is the number one receiver there. Eddie Royal always does this. He always steals some touchdowns away. But Keenan Allen's the number one guy there and is definitely a talented player. So yeah, I would do that pending roster construction. If you really need the running back depth, you're going to want to wait for Ingram to come back and not want to get rid of him just yet. But yeah, I mean, Allen's the better player for the rest of the season by far, and so I'm going to take that deal unless there's other mitigating circumstances.
Yeah, it would have to be pretty big mitigating circumstances because I think this is a pretty big slam dunk for taking Keenan Allen here. I think for Ingram, I don't think he's going to come back and immediately be the guy there. I think Kyrie coming. That's the way I see it. I think I think you're kind of with me on that. That he's a really great player. I think he's a great player. I think he would be if they gave him all the touches. They gave him 18 carries last week. I think that's just going to continue, and he's going to have better performances than he did last week for sure. So I think I'm not like really excited to hold Ingram and Keenan Allen. I don't totally think he's going to rebound to what he was expected to be. I'm not like completely sold on that. But in this trade, I'd definitely take him. I think San Diego's just going to be weird all year with, so there are going to be some weeks that Eddie Royal does catch 2 touchdowns, and they're just going to spread it out to, whatever works. I think that's a coaching staff which is smart for real football, that's committed to just kind of going with the game plan, whatever works that week, and whether that's running the ball a ton and feeding crappy players like Eddie Royal, that's fine. They'll do that. They don't care if they're going to win. And I think that's smart for real football, but it's bad if you own Keenan Allen. But in this trade, whoever asked us, I think you definitely take that.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you before we go. This will be my Twitter question to you, @MattHarmon_BYB. Does Kirk Cousins suck?
No. I don't think he sucks.
Okay.
I've been I've been a known Kirk Cousins detractor. I did like I've mentioned. I think I mentioned before. I live right outside DC, so I hear a lot about Kirk Cousins and how he's the greatest thing ever, and how they should have kicked Griffin to the curb immediately. But anyway, so I hear a lot about Cousins, and I'm always telling people he's not that good. But he does look a lot better this year. But he's still a really limited player. I don't see him as a long-term starter. But he might start the rest of the way. So, no, I don't think he sucks, but he's not very good. He's a high-end backup at best.
No, he's not. Yeah, he's not good.
No.
He is Mike Glennon on very weak steroids, is what I've been saying.
He's got a little Fitzpatrick to him. like that he's a super
Not even
limited.
remotely close to the athlete that Ryan Fitzpatrick is.
Yeah, right. I agree with that, but
So yes, if you take away the athleticism from Ryan Fitzpatrick, you may have something that resembles Kirk Cousins, and that's really bad because one of the best things about Ryan Fitzpatrick is his athleticism.
yeah, what I mean by that is that he's a really super limited quarterback as far as a passer. He doesn't
Yes,
have a
and then
big
he also
arm or
can't
anything.
run, which is the same
Yeah.
issue with Glennon. And I'm
Mhm.
totally when the Bucks worked out Terrell Pryor, I was hoping
Yeah.
that they were gonna sign him because I'd rather have a guy who is limited by his brain than limited by his physical abilities because
Seriously.
ultimately you know what you're going to get out of a guy like Cousins or a guy like Glennon.
Yeah.
PFF said that Cousins was only pressured 9 times on like 40 something dropbacks against the Eagles.
And
That's
that's
not
when he's at his worst too, is
yes.
when he's got pressure in his face, and same thing with guys like Fitzpatrick, these limited quarterbacks who try to play the gunslinger, especially when they're under pressure, they try to make these throws that they try to, the old saying like right
Glennon
catch,
is the same. He either makes an
yeah,
awful throw or he just takes a sack.
yeah,
But yeah, it's you're never going to see Fitzpatrick or Cousins be that that unpressured in the game. And his second half was terrible. His second half performance was so much worse than his first. And I wrote about this on Roto Grinders, and you can go look it up if you want to. But just take my word for it. He's always been bad in second halves, and he continues to be bad in second halves. And so that's just further proof that pressure of all kinds gets to Kirk Cousins, and that's not a good situation because then teams know all they have to do is put pressure on him, and that's what happened with Glennon at times last year when the team was capable of putting pressure on him. They did, and he wasn't good.
yeah.
Fitzpatrick at least has gotten to a point where he's good enough to kind of adapt for that and be decent enough to keep a starting job. I don't think that Cousins and Glennon have that athleticism to kind of have a backup plan. They're either their pocket's clean or it's not. They don't have a third option. So
Yeah.
those are two guys that I would avoid pretty much in all formats for any reason at this point. Particularly in daily this week, Kirk Cousins is way too expensive for what he is. You are paying for the top of his ceiling in a matchup where he's going up against a team that has legitimate pass rushers. Matthias Kiwanuka isn't great anymore, and Pierre-Paul's not 100%, but they're better than anything the Eagles have. So,
yeah. So in summary, I don't think he sucks. I'm encouraged by the fact that he looks a little bit better this year. But if I had to take this is exactly how I see the scenario playing out. Because I know Washington football and just what a disaster it is. Cousins starts the rest of the way this season, and they make a big commitment to him. They oust RG3, and which, right or wrong, they oust RG3, and they commit to Cousins, and he gets everybody there fired.
I can see that happening, and I would be totally okay if RG3 came to Tampa, assuming that it's if Mariota's not in the cards. But
he needs to go to Philly. He needs to go to Philly. Go be with Chip Kelly. Let's make that offense super fun.
That would be crazy. But Nick Foles is gonna become a Hall of Famer under Chip Kelly. No, I can't even say that with a straight face. I really feel like the Raiders will go all out for RG3, even with
great. So he can just descend even further into this. Great. You're going to go from Washington, and then you're going to take the only possible step down and go to Oakland.
Yeah, that would be really bad. But
I feel like
they're going to stick with Carr too. But anyway,
yeah.
That'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Game Plan. Matt, talk for a little bit. Tell us where we can find you, and so people can read your lower third and find you on Twitter as well.
Yeah, right there. Matt Harmon _VYB, where I'm generally pontificating on whatever I think, and sometimes it's misguided or ridiculous. But hey, stick with me because I got a few good things to say, I think. But anyways, you can find me writing at Football Guys. Right now, I'm hoping to post tonight. I did a little perception work on Brian Quick. Came away really impressed. Spoiler alert. I also tweeted out the charts and stuff last night. If you're interested, you can ask me about it or find my timeline. Whatever. So, yeah, I've got that coming up. I also write about the Panthers at Black and Blue Review. I'll probably have a Steve Smith post up there because that seems to just be that's what we're talking about. And so here we go. I'll have a little film stuff on him there. And also, I scout for Optimum Scouting. But, again, like I've mentioned before, nobody cares about the Mountain West Conference except you and me. So.
Yeah, and I'm starting to not care because Colorado State's probably just going to be mediocre as always, and so
What a surprise.
yeah, whatever. But you can find me at LeoHowell8 on Twitter. You can find me at numberfire.com where I'm writing all sorts of different stuff. I wrote today about the Saints offense, went a little in depth with our numbers, and did some in-game stuff that we don't normally do, so check that out on the Saints offense. Um, I write for rotogrinders.com where I do weekly tape breakdowns. My most recent one was about Julian Edelman and Kirk Cousins. And then tomorrow or Friday, I will have a piece going up that is going to look into the rookie quarterbacks. It's going to take a look at Shady McCoy and a couple of other things that are going on in the NFL from a daily fantasy perspective, but also from a kind of tape breakdown perspective. And I also write for Bucks Nation. If you want to join us in our frustrations over how bad the Bucks are, you can go to bucksnation.com, and the comment sections are great. Bucks fans are great. Actually, saw a Bucks fan on Twitter today ask one of the beat writers, or tell one of the beat writers, that he thinks that the team should fire Jeff Tedford. For those not familiar, Jeff Tedford,
the one who's like sick, right?
Yes, Jeff Tedford had heart surgery in the preseason and has not been with the team.
Oh my God!
For a month now, and so this user wanted them, or this Twitter user wanted them to fire Jeff Tedford because he's not been around. This is nothing new, though. This is the same team that booed Steve Young off the field before he was scooped up by Bill Walsh and became one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So we are all familiar in Tampa with getting rid of great players. You can see them all around the NFL right now, one of them being Darrelle Revis, even though he's not playing all that well. But chances are, if a player is doing well, he's probably a former Buccaneer, except for E.J. Biggers. He's not that great, but that's because Raheem Morris is there, and he's part of the reason why the Bucs are bad. So he's carried that bad to Washington with him, and has brought a couple of former Buccaneers with him. But that'll do it for this week. For Matt, I am Leo. Thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to this on a podcast version, thank you for listening. You can catch these episodes live. We're going to do them on Wednesday nights now. But if you follow us on Twitter, we will obviously keep you updated as to when they'll actually happen. But Wednesday night kind of works better. We were going to do it on Monday night, but then we don't have information for the week ahead. So now we have some information for Sunday's games and can give you a preview. But that'll do it for this week. Hit us up on Twitter with any questions for the next episode, or email us at fantasygameplan@gmail.com. And you can check out all the episodes historically on YouTube and on iTunes. But on iTunes, I'll be deleting old episodes. But you can just ask for them, and I can give them to you if you really want to listen to old episodes, which you shouldn't. But
they're also on my site too. If you're
on Backyard Banter, yes. On Backyard Banter,
thebackyardbanter.com. Yes.
I always think it's .net for some reason, but did you get .net too? Like, did you get one of those GoDaddy combo deals where you got both of them?
No, I don't think I did.
I almost did that. Actually, I did do that with my first website that I was running because they gave me the .net for like $1. So I just did it and had them redirect. But anyway, enough about my old website that you should not go read because it's really bad. That's enough for this week's Fantasy Game Plan. We will catch you all next week.